you, Parvati.
Thank you so much, Kanchan, and thank you to all of you for both for hosting and bringing together such a fabulous group of exchange and learning and sharing in Reciprocity. I really liked the name. And the fact that, there is so much to reciprocate with each other, especially as we progress through our careers and lives. And I really appreciate the effort that each of you have taken to bring this all together. And thank you very much for inviting me, Kanchan, to share with me the platform and give me an opportunity to share some of my work and thinking with all of you. A very accomplished group, and I appreciate, Aman, thank you very much for facilitating us today. It was great to be able to meet everyone virtually and get to know a little bit about everyone. I really like your format, so I appreciate the very crisp and effective moderation from you, Aman. So thanks a lot. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time on the innovation mindset. And I think, just to confirm, I have about 20-25 minutes.
Yes,
I
you'll
may
have
or may not need all of that.
plus 5 to 7 minutes for questions if people have them. And I'll be changing the slides, so just tell me when.
Sounds good. I'm going to talk a little bit today, and I'm going to. Is there a lag, Aman? Is there any challenge in hearing me?
Yes, there are two
There was a slight lag.
Echoes coming in.
So I'm going to.
So
I'll
switch
stop
off
my
your video.
so that.
Yes, that will help.
Okay, so this should help, and I think this should be better. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about applying an innovation mindset. And I'm going to separate both of those terms out. And we will start with, of course, a bunch of examples. I'm going to walk you through some very, very interesting business ventures, how they came about, the people who set them up, what were they looking to do, and then sort of work backwards from there into a framework that could be useful to all of us as entrepreneurs. When we look at our businesses, when we look at growth, when we look at scale, of our businesses as well. I run, like Kanchan said, 2 businesses. I run a consulting firm. It's called Innovation Alchemy. You're familiar with the word alchemy because you have such a fabulous engagement around that as well. So it's essentially the same theory, which is that alchemy is an approach to being able to create something really valuable, but you can't really know there is a formula to it, and there is no formula to innovation. So there is an approach to it, there is a mindset to it. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, I work out of, now especially in COVID times, I've taken the option to work from my farm so that I can pay attention to the operations of my agri-business and at the same time continue to work from here. I'm sitting in a remote little village out of Tamil Nadu, about 100 kilometers out of Bangalore, which is why you see me in a jacket. It's very cold. We're about 3,000 feet above sea level, and it's a cold day here today, about 18 degrees. So what do I mean by applying an innovation mindset? So let's look at this. You'll see a visual there. Those are incubators for little babies who are either premature or have a challenge in being able to keep their body warm. Mostly children, babies that are born premature, and those are very established protocols for incubation. Now, as we look at this visual, I want you to think about a team that was actually sitting in a design school, a bunch of college students. They were sitting in the Stanford Design School, a couple of Indians, some American students, etc. They came together into what the professor called an extreme design program. And the challenge that was there in front of them was to take a subject that is accepted, established, has some established products around it, and be able to create extreme disruption in that. And so as a team, when they started researching, they were very interested in healthcare, children in, mortality, child mortality, infant mortality, and those kinds of things. They did a lot of research around it. And they said that, for example, here is a product called an incubator. It's expensive. A large number of the children that are born in underdeveloped countries or emerging markets, Africa, India, Brazil, Latin America, etc. The children don't seem to be getting access to these incubation tools and equipment. What can we do to be able to get, increase phenomenal access? Why do we have infant mortality? And when they studied it a little bit, and many of you are from the medical background, so you will know this much more than I do. I'm looking at it from the innovation lens. But they essentially came to the understanding that when children are unable to, their bodies are unable to, retain heat, their growth gets severely impacted, and the incubator basically provides the function of being able to make sure that the body's heat is provided externally till the body grows enough to be able to provide that. I'm just converting it into simple language, right? So they said, well, this is something that we want to be able to do. What if we could create a low-cost incubator? They started with an idea of wanting to create a low-cost incubator. They put a lot of their research together. They had very good statistics around why this is an important issue, and it is truly an important issue. They brought that back to class, and the group then presented along with many other disruptive ideas, and the professor, being the kind of educator that we all perhaps need, was provoking them, and he said, well, do you just need to be low cost, or do you need to find an insight about why current methodology does not work? And so the students applied for a grant. They came out to Nepal and to India, and they studied a little bit about incubators, and they found some very interesting things as they started going into the field. They found that most parents, even very, very deep rural parents, might come to a public healthcare center for the birth to happen, because now it's fairly established that you don't want to be doing births at home through midwives, etc. You should come to a hospital. So they come to a hospital. If a child especially is born premature, they will spend maybe a day or maybe 2 days, taking the services of an incubator. And they will then have to go back to their village. And the reason for that is a lot of them are daily wage labor. A lot of them are working not on their own fields, but are working on other people's fields. When a baby has to be born, the husband, the wife, perhaps the mother or the mother-in-law, all of them come to the hospital to be able to get that process done. And so then they all have to go back, because 3 or 4 lives are right now not working. Wages are not being earned. So very quickly, in a day or two, they will go back to the village. Now the child continues to need incubation. Incubator cannot travel with the child. And so the big insight that happened for this group of students was that it's not that the incubator as a technology has a problem. There is a mobility issue. We don't just need solutions, cheaper incubators in the hospitals. We need mobile, low-cost incubators that can go with the mother, right? So they had, over a period of discussing, over a period of identifying the research, getting onto the ground, finding these insights, they had changed the reference point of what they wanted to disrupt. It was not just the technology, not just making it low cost, but they had to completely reinvent the method in which hospitals were providing incubation. So if you look at the next visual, on the screen, you will see a mother. This is in West Bengal, in a hospital there, or Assam, I think. And the child is wrapped up in what looks like a sleeping blanket. And that became the first product of the company called Embrace. These 4 students not only were so excited about what they had found as an insight, they also got the energy to say that, now that we have an insight about it and we think we can find the technology, why don't we set up a company? They set up a company called Embrace. They registered it in the US, they registered it in India, then moved into India, and this will produce the product here, and we'll test it in the Indian market, and we will start to impact infant mortality due to premature births. And they created this product, and because in their minds, mobility was the problem that they were to solve, they had to find something not only that was low cost, that it could go with the parents, that the mother could be able to manage on her own, and that could still provide the solution that the baby needed, which was external heat and warmth. And so they went through many layers of prototypes. If you see the next visual, You will see a lot of different prototypes that they went through. They have, and basically the heating method that they use, they started with heating method, which was a gel-based a slice like a brick, which fits inside the sleeping bag, which originally needed electric heating and then to be inserted. Then it needed solar. Then it had other methods to being able to do it. I think they are at their, they are maybe 7th or 8th version of the Embrace blanket. Which then they had to work very hard to get through the protocols of our hospitals in India. When I started partnering with this team, it was through a World Bank program. They had applied for a grant to try and scale into Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. And then we had to work with the protocol team of the government to be able to make sure that this could go in. There's an ethics committee. There are a lot of people who review why a protocol should be adopted. And a lot of experiments were done, which were funded by the bank and then accepted by the government. Now, in this, if you'll go to the last slide on this particular story, that is one of the co-founders of the team of business. They come to run the Embrace business. It's now a very established business. They've got a patent on the technology that they have applied for. They are now producing it completely in India. Originally, they started to do some low-cost, imports from China. Now completely India. They're now across about 27 or 28 countries. They are selling in hundreds of thousands. They're partnering with hospitals, with governments. They're basically making available and incubation methodology, but for the purpose that it serves for an underserved community, creating real impact on lives. And I'm sure if you research them more, you'll find a lot of interesting inputs about them. So that's one story. Let's take one more.
Ma'am, may I just interject one sec, Parvati, if you would permit me, on this particular story. There was this aspect of lack of electricity in Nepal and West Bengal villages. Hence the need for hot wax.
Yes.
Hot wax in molten form to be put somehow inside these Embrace made bags, because of electricity problems as well.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And,
and so therefore what you're...
Sorry, this was also mentioned in one of the books we read at the book club. This story of Embrace was there.
That's right.
Fantastic, great. So you're absolutely right. And so the thing that I'm highlighting over here is that you can't reach a final solution overnight, sitting in a laboratory and saying, this is the solution that I want to create. And in my mind, that's the real pursuit of an innovative entrepreneurial venture. I start when I get excited about having found an insight that is interesting, which is what they did. Then they pursued that interest. So they got to prototype 1, then they discovered, well, electricity doesn't, available in Nepal, I need another solution. But there's something else is not available in Jharkhand, I need another solution. Now I can't get it into the government because I need to now have someone on my team who can talk with the government people and give us relationships there. Okay, I'll do another round of innovation. So when we say innovation in a entrepreneurial context, we are not talking about one aha idea. We're talking about a process of thinking. We're talking about an approach to problem solving that has a certain amount of perseverance, persistence, and a constant learning capability in it, which is what this particular team highlights. I'll come back to this when we look at the framework a little later. Let's next example, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. So these are classically toilets in many of our schools, anywhere, in fact, in India before the Swachh Bharat mission came into place, and the conversation around toilets became a normal conversation to have. This was something that existed. We never looked at it. We didn't want to discuss it, but these are now normal toilets in schools. If you've read the case of Embrace, you possibly also read about the challenge of schools and toilets. You will know, for example, that one of the big reasons for school dropouts in the 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, for girls especially, is because of lack of sanitation, especially because they come into puberty, they need clean hygiene, they find it very difficult to be in school and be having to hold back urination the whole day in order to be able to go back. The mothers tend to say, all right, you might just drop it and home. And so there's a lot of repercussions of having, poor quality sanitation. Now, there have been many projects on this. The one that I want to highlight is by an engineering company called IRAM. I'm not sure if you heard of this particular story before. IRAM is a Kerala-based organization, has a lot of operations in the Middle East. So they are Middle East and Kerala, and they're an engineering firm. So they do a lot of bespoke engineering on projects, industrial projects, large, infrastructure pieces, etc., etc. Now, within this organization was a small team that had joined in with a little bit of government background, and they were helping the government, trying to say, okay, what can we do as bespoke engineering projects for you? And one of the things that came up, this was pre-Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. One of the things that came up to 2011, 2012 was the fact that we need to look at toilets, and we need to figure out a way to be able to apply engineering thinking to toilets. Why don't we take a problem which is so big that that we don't seem to have solutions to it, and try and put engineering thinking into what we can do with it? And they, of course, then started to research toilets. They started to talk to the women and the girls and the boys who used it in schools. They talked to the teachers. They looked at various government facilities, hospitals, etc. They went out and met people. And they came to the understanding that there are two problems with toilets, which is what made toilets so unhygienic overall as government infrastructure. Nobody was cleaning it. So you could have a toilet, you could create the infrastructure and the toilet, but there was nobody cleaning it. Even in our homes on a daily basis, somebody who actually cleans the washroom. And so it stays clean. Somebody's using a Harpic or a brush or whatever, keeping it clean. If we were not to do that, even in our homes, you would find that smells would come in, that there would be a lot of germ infestation and so on and so forth. And they found that because you could create a toilet, but you would not be able to hire someone to actually clean it. And so that over a period of many years, it was creating a lot of residual issue. It would become unusable. Nobody was using it. Maintenance was a major issue. So this team started putting their thoughts behind solving that problem. And they said, how do we apply engineering to that? If you see the next visual, you will see these are of course, the nth level prototypes. These are currently stationed in the cantonment in Wellington, which is in Coonoor, in the Nilgiris. These are, of course, very advanced stages of their toilets. They call it an EAT. So design mandate was, we will create a product that will compete with the regular toilet structures. It will be unmanned, but it will be self-cleaning. Because they said that the insight that they found for the breakthrough for them, if we can find a way to keep it clean without another human being using it, the cost of their infrastructure would pan out over a period of time, but they would be usable toilets. And so they started putting technology into this product and created e-toilet, then established e-toilet prototypes into colleges and schools and hospitals. They found women were worried to go inside. It was a steel chamber. They thought, what if light goes away? There was fear of darkness. There was fear of going into something that was closed of this nature. People were not using it. So they went through many, many, many layers of innovation before they arrived at what their product is today. And they have a range of products today. Of course, this has now been funded big time, both by the government. Government buys a lot of e-toilet, established. All they need is a water line. Now they have done innovation on the aerobic and the anaerobic digesters that sit under the toilet, so it stays very clean. It self-washes. It has got coin slots if you want to make it entrepreneurial. It has got boards if you want to make it, if, for example, they've designed one which can sit outside on the highways, outside a small dhaba. The entrepreneur can buy a toilet and set it up outside. He can use it as a billboard, the front of it. He can light it up. He can earn some money out of it. So it can actually be a micro entrepreneurial venture for the dhaba as well, if he wanted to just use that as a pull for highway drivers to come in, and especially women to come in and be able to use the dhaba and the food. So they've created lots of interesting little prototypes. It's now not only, operating in India, it's operating in Latin America as well. Many governments have bought it. And the team has continued to innovate because every new requirement teaches them a little bit about the material, the technology, what can we put, to the extent that today all their toilets, especially these formats, are tagged. They are collecting data. They all have internet capability. So they are able to tell how many liters of water has been used across all our toilets, how many times is the door opened and closed, assuming that that's the number of people going in, how much money has each toilet made in terms of the coins that have been used. So they're now starting to track data to try and provide insight from it. So let's go to the next slide. This is, of course, in a school usage, you'll see the model is slightly different. The water container on the top is slightly different. Children are very familiar with these now. They are designed in such a way that they look different, they behave different from the regular toilets that we are used to seeing. And they're starting to slowly bring about a transformation in the way that schools are thinking about this kind of technology. So let's move ahead. The reason I'm highlighting these kinds of stories is that we are talking about not just entrepreneurship, we're talking about an innovation mindset applied to entrepreneurship. And of course, somebody like Bill Gates is spending millions and billions of dollars on this particular subject. ERAM has also gotten funded after their prototypes got to his attention. They've been in competitions. They have now picked up a lot of funding from this. If you move forward a little bit to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight that these are, as they started to progress, they realized that this was not something that they alone were working on. ERAM, many people are working on it. Somebody like Bill Gates is putting a lot of money behind it. And what that does is that when you power it up with philanthropy, and in this case, he has spent, over about 200 million over the last 7 years in sanitation research alone. Bill Gates, for example, now hosts an annual global competition on just toilets. And when that is held, that has a range of different products coming in from all over the world. It also has a range of buyers coming in from all over the world. This is not just a sanitation issue anymore. This is the next level of human waste management. What do you do with the waste that gets collected? So there's a lot of interesting research happening there. Let's move forward. I wanted to just highlight, therefore, what is innovation? We often get confused about it being invention, but in my mind, it is really about creating new value because the requirements are changed, because we understand the insight at a core level. It's about creating new value for your customers, for your users, but you can only create that new value if you have a fresh, real, fundamental insight available on which you can base your innovation. So it's really a process that combines discovering an opportunity, being very convinced about it, and then on that, blueprinting an idea to seize that opportunity and implementing that idea to achieve results. So it's really impact is an outcome of innovation. No impact is no innovation. And that's the way that I really look at it. We have, of course, you can move forward. And I will perhaps, I'm just putting this thought together in my mind when I look at innovation, especially in the 2020 context, given where we are today, given the understanding that things are fragile, environment is deeply fragile, human systems are fragile, when even a microscopic virus can put us all indoors, 7 billion of us, and put a threat to the entire world. So what does innovation require for entrepreneurs? It requires a change maker approach. I want to make a true change. And Astha's examples around being able to approach mental health from an inclusive perspective, or even we heard a little bit from Manisha about mindfulness. A lot of that, all of that is about the change maker approach. I want to make a change in myself, in my environment, in the country, in people, something. Where do you want to make a true change? Applied to that, an innovation mindset, therefore looking for the real insight on which you can base a business, then the entrepreneurship that goes along with it, and of course, linking into funding, government policy, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really, in my mind, bringing together an opportunity to not just run a business, but to be able to truly make inclusive impact happen as a result of the business. And in a minute or two that I have remaining, if you don't mind just moving a couple of slides ahead, I was going to talk a little bit about Amul, but I think the point has been made, so we can go forward another little bit more. Amul is a great example of an old innovation business because it has, it's a company that got built out of two farm members who owned cows, and it grew from there as the insight for Dr. Verghese Kurian came from there, and then he built the business, but I won't talk about that because we have limited time. You can move forward from there as well, Aman. So I just wanted to take a minute to focus on this when we talk about change maker approach and the innovation mindset. What are we really asking ourselves when we have an idea in our mind? Having an idea is not enough. having an idea and prototyping it and actually testing it on the ground is a very important next step. All of us will agree, we are all entrepreneurs. We are used to doing that. But what are the questions we are asking us? We are saying, does it have an impact? Who did I want to create an impact on? And does it work in that context? Will it scale? Can I take it to more people? Are there more people like my customer current constituency who needs this? And finally, is there a value that can actually get created, not only a value for the customer, but also a value for the organization? And in the midst of all of that, at the sweet spot between all these three, in my mind, is really where social innovation happens. You're not just building a company that can create wealth, it can create jobs, and I think all of that is good, but it can truly create social innovation if it has a certain amount of human or environmental impact at the center of its thinking. And really, that's the kind of work that we do in Innovation Alchemy. My interest personally is to work with entrepreneurs who are keen to invest some R&D money in being able to build a socially relevant product or service, or innovators who have what they think is a socially relevant product or service, convert that idea into entrepreneurship. So I really like to bridge the gap between innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think that's really the, Dr. Mashalkar, who's such a major thinker in the space of innovation in India. He says that innovation is truly the path from Saraswati to Laxmi. And he says it's only when you have passed through the gates of Saraswati and gained deep knowledge about something that you can actually create the point of, by Lakshmi, he means the value, which is both external as well as internal. And I think that's a very interesting construct of thinking about it. So therefore, a lot of R&D based on great insights, the insight based on actual feedback and customer engagement on the ground leads to a lot of impactful work being done. That's it. You can now, I think, move forward. We've talked about this already, and I won't spend too much time on it, but very often we confuse innovation with invention, but it's actually the next level to invention. You can have a product, nobody using it. And in my mind, for example, electric powered cars are still sitting in the invention bucket because the number of people using electric powered cars is so little. Unless they find innovation to the business model, to the look, feel, and shape. Perhaps Tesla has found that, which is why Elon Musk is so relevant to us, because he's taken the invention of the battery and the battery operated car, but given us a car that we truly desire and say, okay, that if I had to have a electric powered car, then it's a Tesla for me. He's taken it to the level of innovation and he's built an enterprise on it. And that's the journey of purposeful entrepreneurship, finding a product and a service that truly provides value, doing the innovation so that it creates that impact, and then building an enterprise on it. With that, I will close. You can move to the next slide after this. Well, you can reach me on all of these. I live and work at my farm. I'm a farmer myself, and I do a lot of horticulture production, and I combine that with the work I'm with innovators and entrepreneurs and working, one-on-one with many of them to try and help them build their ideas and organizations. So with that, again, thank you very much to all of you for having given me the platform to share a little bit of what I do and some of the thinking and the frameworks.
Thank you,
Thank you, Aman.
Thank you, Aman. And we have questions. So Sanjeev, please raise his hand. So yes, sir, go ahead.
Mute myself first.
Yes, you're on mute, sir.
Okay, thank you, Aman. May I address you as Parvathi or Mrs. Menon? How do you like it to be
Parvathi
addressed?
is great, sir.
Okay. Parvathi, two things I'd like to ask you. I was intrigued when reading your CV that was circulated by Kanchan. It spoke about merging floriculture with fruit, vegetables, and flowers. And you talked of hedged business model. I'd like to understand this hedged business model as well as achieving operational sustainability in the second year of operations. It's a struggle to have enough produce with the challenges that we face in the agri sector, to my understanding. How did you manage to get the channels of distribution in place to reach the produce in the market? After all, these are perishable goods.
Yes, absolutely right. So the hedge.
The hedge business model and also on operational sustainability within the second year.
Yes.
And ma'am, is that you on the tractor?
Yes, that's right.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Okay. Please tell us.
So the hedged business model, basically one of the big challenges when I was researching horticulture as my next business to sort of venture into, I was trying to see what makes people unsuccessful. And I met a lot of farmers who had set up, modern farmers, people like me who had set up farms and found that they were unsuccessful. A lot of traditional farmers who had tried technologies, greenhouses, etc., or a lot of other crops and been unsuccessful. And my learning was that their dependence on one or two crops is so high that when that crop fails, their losses are very, very large. They find it very difficult to beat that. And so in India, if you look at Kharif and Rabi as the two seasons, typically because we are traditionally following those kinds of methods, you're using, Kharif to grow a certain set of crops, Rabi to grow a certain set of crops. You're circulating the field on those 2 or 3 crops, and in the middle, maybe growing some vegetables. And what I found was that if you stay limited to those markets, the chances of a hit and a heavy loss are very high. So I said, I will hedge it. How do you hedge it? In my first I actually went to, I have about 8 acres that 8 to 10 acres that I farm. 2 acres were put into a greenhouse, and the greenhouse was going to grow only exotic flowers, which are a specialty requirement, which take only 3 or 4 months for me to grow from sapling to this thing. It's a high investment, but it gets me into cash flow within maybe say 4 months. It got me into cash flow within 4 months. It sells at its peak. It sells at a very good price. If I can auction that, I get very good prices. When I take the money from that and I invest that into vegetables, when I do vegetables, I do open sky vegetables with a gap methodology. So my vegetables are going into the market, and then I have some fruits, which are plantation crops, which will take 2 years to get into the market. And then I have open sky roses, which go into the puja market. So basically my hedged model is don't go to one buyer alone, have products that go to 3 or 4 different markets, 3 or 4 different buyers, so that every day on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you have some income coming in from one of these. Even if my puja market goes down, my Zarbera market goes up because something else is there. The Zarbera market goes down, my vegetable market goes up at any point in time. So you don't do 8 acres and do 2 things in 8 acres, but you do, many different things in 8 acres. So you're trying to do that. So so I linked unit cost to a hedge model, and that's how I structured that. And as a result of that, I was able to draw my operational cash flow from the greenhouse, pump that into all the other pieces that I was developing, and then by the time the greenhouse crop started to finish up, I had already set up enough in terms of the plantation crops, say bananas, papayas, and so on and so forth, roses of the open sky. So that carried me forward, and that's how I hit sustainability in about 2 to 3 years time, in order to be able to run the farm. And then of course, I've now gone into phase 2, where I have moved out of greenhouses and have now gone into a full plantation. What you see in that visual is where my greenhouses used to be, which I then dismantled because I learned a lot about that technology. I learned a lot about soil, and I learned enough for me to not want to do greenhouses anymore. And I have gone 180 degrees on the other side into natural farming.
Okay, just a thought, what you have done with 8 acres, suppose you are to consolidate into say 50 or 100 acres with other farmers' lands adjacent to yours. Can this not be replicated on a larger model, much larger model?
It can absolutely be replicated, sir. And that was my original intention, is to the fields that I am farming right now. I hope for it to be a learning ground, to be a hub for prototypes, and to build a scalable model from here. I find it difficult. I am finding it difficult to try and change the minds of the traditional farmers, and there is a whole discussion there. But the biggest challenge over there is that the people who are farming now in the traditional mode, or whatever you might want to call conventional mode, are really the last members of the family who are, who don't want to get a job in the city, and they're saying, "Theek hai, aap na khet dekh lena." So they're leaving the least talented person in the farm to khet dekhne ke liye. So he's not really willing to learn because he's resigned to it. He's just doing whatever to keep that property going and some income coming. So he's very chemical. But I'm finding my big, interest coming in from urban farmers like me. And in a city like Bangalore, a lot of service people, many people are saying, okay, abhi 20 years maine Infosys mein kar liya, and now I want to do something different, and organic farming is very interesting. There are people who want to learn farming and come back. So they are buying 2 acres, 3 acres, 4 acres. And I think the next phase of my farm would ideally be as a learning center for other urban farmers to come and learn from what we have learned and replicate what we are doing, because we are also building channels. Because I was doing such large scale flowers and vegetables, I am a vendor for all the big retail chains, for all the organic shops, etc., etc. And so the idea is to try and replicate. In about a year, we will be ready for replication.
Wonderful. Hopefully. And I think organic farming must be a natural consequence of all this, because you don't have adulteration there, right? Up in the villages. For the
well, no, actually the adulteration in villages is very high, very high. The amount of in pesticide, and so it has taken me 2 years to turn my soil, to bring the microbes back into my soil. And I do natural farming now, which is a level above organic, because we get nothing in. We have our own cows, we use our own farmyard manure, we make our own Jivamrit from cow urine and everything. And so we've made a very, very integrated system, which is what makes us somewhat sustainable, because we don't bring any inputs from outside, no cost on inputs.
Thank you.